for more on these developments on Trump's legal troubles. I want to bring in former federal prosecutor Joe Moreno. So, Joe, what does this latest indictment develop mean? It's being called and described as a superseding indictment. What exactly does that mean? Is it a completely new indictment, or charges are just added and now there's a third co-defendant?
That's right, Tom. It's good to be with you. That's exactly right. It replaces the original indictment with additional charges, additional defendants, and, frankly, additional legal troubles for Donald Trump. I mean, this was already a serious case. People looking at this case said, gosh, I don't know how Donald Trump is legally going to defend himself against these charges. Well, it got a lot worse about an hour ago, because now he has obstruction charges to face. And his arguments in trying to say that he did not realize he shouldn't have these documents, or he thought he could declassify these documents, those arguments were already shaky. Now that there's evidence that he took extensive steps to hide the fact that he had the documents, I don't really know how he gets out of this.
So, Joe, what do you think happened here from the time that he was indicted on this case to these new charges, to this new co-defendant? I mean, do you think other people talked? Do you think something came up in the investigation that didn't come up before? I'm just wondering, when they get the indictment in the first place, you think they want to sort of cross all their T's, dot all their I's? What has happened since then?
Well, Tom, just because an indictment comes out does not mean an investigation ends. So leads that possibly weren't followed at the beginning are followed up on. Witnesses could come out of the woodwork. Other individuals who are implicated could cooperate. And so cases continue to develop, and superseding indictments are not that unusual. In fact, people speculated when the first one came out that it was very likely additional charges would follow. So I'm not really surprised. But it certainly adds more to the narrative of what Donald Trump is now going to have to defend himself against.
Joe, if we can transition over to this other case, the case that we've been watching, the belief that possibly former President Trump will be indicted over his alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election. As far as timeline goes, we were just talking about this with Jonathan, what do you think is going to happen if the grand jury, according to our reporting, didn't vote today? And again, anything could change. Will it be a couple of days? Will it be next week before anything happens?
Well, most likely based on the timing of when they sit. So remember, the fact that Trump got a target letter last week means that in the eyes of the Justice Department, he should be charged with something. Now, of course, the Justice Department still has to convince a grand jury to vote on charges and, of course, what those charges will be. So I do think something is coming. The real question that lawyers like myself wonder about is, what will those charges look like? Will they try to tie Donald Trump to the violence on January 6th? Or will it be something a little more elaborate regarding fraud or obstruction of Congress, or a more detailed effort starting from the election through January 6th to change the course of the election? I'm betting on the second. I think tying him to the violence is going to be tough. Tying him to efforts to overturn the election, I predict that's where the grand jury will ultimately go.
Joe, is this very unusual? I'm just thinking about the Department of Justice and Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, handling all these cases, and we're just a day out of what just happened with the current president's son, Hunter Biden. Is there ever any coordination, or is each investigation completely independent of the calendar?
Well, Tom, none of this is usual, right? I mean, we are in truly uncharted territories here on multiple dimensions. But really, these operate pretty independently. I mean, of course, Jack Smith has the January 6th investigation, as well as the Mar-a-Lago classified documents investigation. But my guess is his teams are running in parallel. Hunter Biden is totally separate. And the reality is, one really should have nothing to do with the other, whether in terms of timing of charges, whether in terms of headlines, nothing like that. They really should be focused on the facts and the law. They should not be thinking about next year's presidential calendar. They should not be worried about Donald Trump's opponent is likely going to be Joe Biden. None of that should really be relevant. It should be, where are the cases, where are the facts and the law taking each individual case?
Former federal prosecutor Joe Moreno, thank you. Staying in Washington now, we turn to a concerning moment on Capitol Hill earlier today. Senator